We are starting with The Rock, and in a recent Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was stated that TKO wants him to follow its TV PG guidelines, and that many felt there was a double standard in the company. Some in WWE even said that it felt like the Vince McMahon era had returned, as The Rock was being granted leniency not extended to other full-time talent, resulting in The Rock weighing in. On Twitter, Rock described the report as Horsesh, and when a fan questioned Meltzer on it, he made clear that he was not the initial source claiming that TKO wanted a change. On the contrary, Meltzer said that he acknowledged that bigger stars get treated more favorably than others, and said somehow the story got changed to the point that he was the initial source. If the report is indeed false as The Rock claims, then that isn't Meltzer's fault, it seems, as the newsletter was a collaboration of what had been reported across various sources. The Rock will continue to do what he wants on WWE TV, which does push the company's PG rating, but TKO clearly feel it's worth pushing the envelope to have the final boss on TV. On last week's SmackDown, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns came face to face in a segment which both men had vowed to show up to without their usual backup. As explained on Raw, Paul Heyman was allowed to be there as he's no physical threat to Cody, but neither side really kept to their word. When Rhodes offered a handshake, Reigns' Bloodline allies Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso appeared, and Rhodes' allies of Jey Uso and Seth Rollins arrived to even the score. Many did not like this segment that promised to deliver Rhodes and Reigns one-on-one, and on Twitter, one fan said that The Rock's writer Brian Gewirtz was to blame for the letdown. This spawned a response from Gewirtz, who hit back by saying he'd rather take advice from a bot account sharing adult content, as it didn't know as much about the business as the fan in question. This was quite the response from Gewirtz, who, like his boss, has not been holding back on social media and even took aim at Cody's goofy-ass dog Pharaoh. Brian Gewirtz is getting in the swing of being a heel on social media, but seemed genuinely annoyed at the fan. And what did you make to last week's segment on SmackDown? After a shaky start to his return to WWE, The Rock has found his groove as a heel once again, with his work as part of the Bloodline ironically proving very popular with fans. The return of The Rock's Hollywood persona has been matched with his use of profanity against opponents, and it's impossible to ignore the buzz that his comeback has created. Taking to Twitter in character, The Rock said that he was responsible for making wrestling cool and popular again, adding that he's made wrestling unpredictable and has raised the bar again. With a message to Cody Rhodes fans, he told them to off, crybabies, and said that he has a special belt for Cody's mother, one that'll be covered in her tears and her son's blood. The Rock isn't the only name to be dominating in the Bloodline, as Roman Reigns recently reached a milestone in his run as WWE Universal Champion. It was back at WWE Payback in August 2020 that Reigns outsmarted The Fiend and Braun Strowman in a triple threat to win the gold, and he's held the title ever since. Since then, Reigns has walked into 3 WrestleManias as the champion, and the 4th one is on the horizon now, and unified the gold with the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 38. Reigns' run has been so dominant that WWE felt the need to create the World Heavyweight Championship in May 2023, which also coincided with Reigns reaching day 1,000. This past week, Reigns reached day 1,300 of his run as champion, a feat that hasn't been seen by any champion in WWE in decades. Whether Reigns' run continues after WrestleMania, that remains to be seen, but odds are it'll be a very long time before we see a title reign as dominant as this one, if ever again. As we mentioned, The Rock's return to WWE earlier this year didn't start well, with fans outraged that he was seemingly poised to take Cody Rhodes' spot as Roman Reigns' opponent. While WWE has since corrected course, there are some who still aren't happy, with some even feeling that there was no real reason for The Rock to come back in the first place. One person who doesn't feel that way is Jim Ross, who on his Grilling JR podcast couldn't fathom why some fans are against the return of the Hollywood megastar. He said, "It's hard to read comments from those that criticize Rock's return and how he returned, etc., ad nauseum. Stop and think about it. You're a booker. If you're running the show and you get an opportunity to retain the services of the Great One, then you don't even think about it. That's a very easy decision to make. I'm glad that he's back. He seems to be having a good time." The Rock has already been announced for the April 1st edition of Monday Night Raw, which will be the go-home show before WrestleMania, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. Are you pleased that the final boss is back with WWE, or do you wish The Rock had known his role and stayed away? Let us know down in the comments. Right now, there's few wrestlers in the world more popular than Rhea Ripley, and at a recent WWE Live event, Mommy once again delighted fans with one very notable move. During her match in Springfield, Illinois with Nia Jax, the Irresistible Force tried to hit a stink face, a nod to her fellow Bloodline relation Rikishi. Jax was able to escape being hit, and much to the delight of the crowd, Ripley pulled up her trunks and gave a stink face of her own to the former women's tag team champion. Fans absolutely loved what Ripley did at the show, and on Twitter, Rhea told Jax that she's welcome and that payback's a peach. Countless fans wish they were Nia Jax in that moment, and Ripley clearly had a lot of fun with the move, but it'll be all business at WrestleMania 40 in less than 2 weeks. At the show, Ripley will defend the women's world title against Becky Lynch, and we'll have to see if Mommy still comes out on top like she did this past weekend against Nia Jax. Now, Ronda Rousey has been very critical of WWE since her exit, even going as far as to say that WWE executive Bruce Prichard, alongside John Laurinaitis, can go fuck himself. Rousey said following Vince McMahon's resignation earlier this year that as long as Prichard was around, Vince would still have influence, seeing Prichard as an avatar of Vince's whim. During the Fightful Select Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp was asked about Rousey's comments and said that Prichard is taking the approach of simply ignoring what she had to say. I can tell you some other comments that she had made that were debunked, some that she had made during an interview, and some people like, hey, what's up with this? Not only could I not find any credibility, but some of them were debunked. I don't know if she's in book selling mode, or maybe she got some bad intel, or I got bad intel. Nobody's really trying to stand up for John Laurinaitis or Vince McMahon these days there. Nobody is. With Bruce, he just kind of ignores it. Nobody in WWE is defending Vince McMahon or John Laurinaitis, but didn't share what specific claims by Rousey have been debunked or found to be not credible. Ultimately, Rousey will continue to do what she wishes, as she has no plans to return to WWE, but it seems not everything she has said about the company has been on the level. WrestleMania news now, as CM Punk won't be competing at the event due to his torn triceps injury, but he has vowed to be at the show, whether he's invited or not. Before WrestleMania, though, Punk will be on tonight's episode of Raw from Chicago, Illinois, and on Instagram said he's working on something cool for the fans going to WrestleMania. As to what Punk has planned, we may find out on tonight's show, but the best in the world is promising something for Mania, even if he won't be lacing up his boots. Ever since the Vince McMahon allegations were made public, there's been a spotlight on WWE and how it treats female talent, both past and present. Few women in wrestling have done better than Becky Lynch, who recently sat down with Mark Haynes of the Irish Independent to discuss the situation regarding WWE's former chairman. Lynch said that she doesn't recognize the person discussed in these allegations, as her experiences with McMahon were almost entirely positive. She added, "So it's very hard to reconcile that somebody else didn't have that experience and that other women didn't have that experience, especially when I had him to thank for my dream, for my husband, fellow WWE star Seth Rollins, for my daughter, for the life that I have now. It's hard to see those two different people in my head, and trying to merge them as one becomes very difficult. You're reading these horrific allegations, but about somebody that you look up to as very much almost like a father figure. So you have to listen to these things, and that becomes very difficult because you've had no negative experience and you want everybody to have the same experience that you've had, because I would always love my interactions with him, and that becomes very, very difficult, especially as a woman who has been so driven in changing the way that women are treated in wrestling and making sure that it is a safe space, that we are seen as athletes, that we are taken seriously, that we are appreciated for our minds, for our body of work, and for what we do in the ring." Lynch added that she's always been fortunate in her career to feel supported by WWE, and said that while there were some restrictions early on, things have improved for women in the ring. She noted that early into her WWE run, women still weren't allowed to punch, but they instead had to deal with hair pulling, but things have changed for the better since then. Describing the allegations as horrible, Lynch's words echo similar sentiment to many in and out of WWE, and we'll continue to follow McMahon's situation for further updates. The last time fans saw MJF, it was at AEW World's End, where he lost the world title to Samoa Joe, and speculation has been running rife about his future. Some have suggested that MJF could be heading to WWE, something he has teased in the past, but even if that is the case, it won't be happening soon. During Fightful Select's Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp was asked about MJF and said he's still healing up from various injuries and his healing is progressing slower than what was anticipated. With that said, MJF was always planning to take some time off from AEW after his title loss, but it became clear as World's End drew nearer that he'd need a lot of time off. MJF has been removed from AEW's roster and merchandise shop, leading to growing speculation that he could head to WWE, and Cody Rhodes even made a reference to the salt of the earth during a recent promo. With that said, it was reported last year that MJF had quietly re-signed with AEW and that his teases of leaving was just done for show. Ultimately, MJF will do what he thinks is in his best interest, and where do you think he should go? Let us know in the comments. We're less than 2 weeks away from WrestleMania 40, but while WrestleMania 41 is just over a year away, WWE has yet to confirm where that show will be. Since July of 2023, it's been reported that Minneapolis is a frontrunner to host WWE WrestleMania 41 in 2025, and the city is under the assumption that an announcement will come soon. Multiple government officials have dropped hints suggesting the imminent announcement of a major event, and have made no secret that they want WrestleMania in their city. Governor Walz recently made reference to WrestleMania, highlighting the economic impact and excitement surrounding the potential hosting opportunity at US Bank Stadium. While it's also been rumored that Las Vegas was going to be the host, the belief is that if that were the case, it would have been announced during the WrestleMania kickoff event last month. Until WWE makes an announcement, plans could always change, but right now, expect the company's biggest event of 2025 to take place at the City of Lakes. Now, before she was Mercedes Mone, AEW's newest signing made a name for herself as Sasha Banks, and for years was one of the WWE's women's division's biggest stars. During the latest episode of his Storytime with Dutch Mantel podcast, Mantel recalled working alongside Mone in WWE and suggested she had something of an attitude. "You know that woman Mercedes Mone has never spoken to me, she's never even said hello to me. That's just when I was in WWE with her. She never said hi Dutch or hi Zeb. She never said any of that to me. I don't know why. She just never spoke. See, it's actually a protocol for the younger talent to say hello to the established talent first. That's just like protocol, but she never did." Dutch was clearly annoyed that Mone never came up to him and said hi, which he found disrespectful, but as he would admit, he didn't make such an offer either. "No, I didn't say hello to her. She didn't speak, so that was telling me, well, don't speak to me, I'm royalty." And I said, okay. That's what I got in my head. Mone's days in WWE are behind her, but Mantel hasn't forgotten how she acted in WWE, though he could have always said hi if he wanted the pair to have a dialogue. But what do you think? Was Mercedes Mone disrespectful to Mantel? Or should he have made an effort to talk if he wanted them to talk? Let us know in the comment section down below. Right now, few WWE superstars have been on a roll more than Drew McIntyre, whose transformation into a heel has made him a hit with audiences around the world. Instead of portraying a menacing heel as he has in the past, the Scottish Warrior has embraced a persona centered on authenticity and speaking his mind. On the Masked Man show, McIntyre spoke about this heel run compared to his previous menacing personas and what's working this time around. He said, "Just 2 weeks away from my biggest WrestleMania match against WWE World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins, I've realized the importance of being true to myself. Trying to be genuine, logical, and injecting fun into what I do has resonated positively with the audience. From 2019 to 2023, there was more truth in my portrayal than ever before in WWE, but now it's 100% me." Speaking of having fun, McIntyre spoke about injecting his own sense of humor into his new character, which he admits may be a bit too strong for American viewers. He said, "I'm always attentive to feedback. It's very much a collaborative effort, but it's worth noting that the British personality and sense of humor differ significantly from the American counterpart. We tend to be quite edgy and unapologetically offensive. I'm constantly tuned into feedback. It's a truly collaborative process, but it's important to acknowledge the distinction between a British and American humor. We Brits tend to embrace edginess and unapologetic offensiveness." McIntyre has certainly been having fun and even took his victory lap in his car to CM Punk's music when he saw a crowd of fans chanting for Punk after an episode of Raw. Whether this fun leads McIntyre to becoming World Heavyweight Champion, time will tell, but what do you make of the new direction Drew has been going in recent months? It was after her MMA rules match with Shayna Baszler at SummerSlam 2023 that Ronda Rousey left WWE, and since then, the ex-UFC fighter hasn't held back with her views on the company. Upon her return and subsequent victory in the Royal Rumble in January 2022, plans were in place for Ronda Rousey to have a heel run, but those plans were scrapped. At the time, it was said that the positive response Rousey received from fans upon her return led to WWE changing course, but Ronda herself really wanted the heel turn to happen. In her autobiography, Our Fight, set to release on April 4th, Rousey recalled her persistent efforts for WWE to stick with the heel run, but WWE said the time wasn't right. She states, "I called Triple H and told him I was done being a babyface. I was no longer capable of playing the good guy. I was done smiling and shaking hands while being shit on. I wanted to be able to defend myself, to say what was on my mind. It was my turn to turn. But as hard as I pushed, WWE pushed back. It just wasn't yet time, I was told. We had to build up to it further," the producers said. "We needed to better develop the characters. They talked about it as if they were writing scripts for serious actors who wanted to know, what's my motivation in this scene? And not people who were smashing each other through tables. I went out every week, night after night, and I sold falls, hits, and cheap shots like a fucking champ for WWE, but the fans hated it. The novelty of my arrival had worn off for everyone, including me. The story that WWE prides itself so much on telling was going nowhere. As months passed, I started to feel like WWE had sold me a bunch of bullshit." Rousey would have to wait until much later in the year before she was granted a heel turn, which came after a somewhat forgettable reign as SmackDown Women's Champion. She'd win the gold back from Liv Morgan that October, and ironically, WWE's efforts to turn her face in 2023 would backfire as fans rallied behind Shayna Baszler instead. As for now, Rousey has made it clear she's retired from wrestling, and do you think she should have been brought back as a heel in early 2022? Let us know in the comments. Right now, the OC have been making waves in WWE NXT, but last week, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows had a match on SmackDown against Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. Fans may have noticed that this match had a different vibe to it, and as Fightful Select reports, the match did differ from the usual presentation of the former Raw Tag Team Champions. The notable difference was attributed to Luke Gallows taking the majority of offense during the match, which deviates from their typical match formula. As for why Gallows took the brunt of the offense, that's unclear right now, but there's been no word on Anderson being injured, which would necessitate Gallows doing the work. On next week's NXT, the duo will be in a triple threat tag team match, with the winners earning an NXT tag team title match against Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker. It'll be interesting to see if this different dynamic continues in upcoming matches, as this change from the norm took many by surprise on last week's edition of SmackDown. After relaunching in January with their Hard to Kill event, TNA is gearing up for what they hope will be a memorable year, but it'll go ahead without some very notable names. TNA certainly spawned controversy with the firing of Scott D'Amore, and now it appears that Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin have also ended their time with the promotion. PW Insider has reported that following the most recent TNA taping in Philadelphia, the TNA roster gathered backstage to bid farewell to the pair of former world champions. Their contracts are believed to expire on April 20th, and the duo is scheduled to appear for Smash Wrestling on April 21st, which coincides with TNA's post-Rebellion TV tapings. Their final TV appearance is scheduled to air in April, where the Motor City Machine Guns will challenge Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers for the TNA World Tag Team Championships. While some within TNA are framing this as the team being finished for now, the possibility of their return hinges on whether they sign with another promotion in the future. Sabin and Shelley are both TNA World Champions who have long been associated with the promotion, and Shelley has also worked in NXT, New Japan, AEW, ROH, and MLW. Sabin has appeared in AEW, New Japan, ROH, and CMLL over the past 15 years, and it remains to be seen what the pair do next with their latest TNA runs coming to an end. It was also reported recently that Killer Kelly had wrapped up with the company at the TNA Sacrifice tapings, but now more information has come to light. Fightful Select reports that Kelly wrapped up her current run, but she still is under contract and is merely taking a break from TNA for the time being. Kelly's contract won't expire until April 2025, according to the report, so fans can expect to see more of her in TNA, just not right now. For years, Bill Goldberg flattened opponents in the ring en route to becoming a legend of wrestling, but he's not the only athlete in his family. Gage Goldberg, the son of the Hall of Famer, has committed to play football for Colorado next season, but fans shouldn't expect to see him lace up his boots for the ring. On the Nothing Left Unsaid podcast, Goldberg opened up about his son's lack of interest in being a wrestler and added that he isn't keen on seeing his son enter the industry either. Goldberg expressed his hope that wrestling isn't in Gage's future, but if it was, Bill would feel compelled to serve as his son's agent, a role that might not sit well with everyone. Despite his own successful wrestling career, Goldberg acknowledges the challenges his son faces in carving out his own path, as he's sure Gage would be constantly compared to him. Goldberg recently made headlines for his comments against Asuka and Triple H, which fans didn't take too kindly to, as he was mad at some Japanese girl surpassing his WCW streak. With that in mind, fans really shouldn't expect to see Gage Goldberg in a WWE ring, and according to both father and son, a future in wrestling isn't the plan. At the March 22nd tapings of WWE SmackDown, WWE filmed some more matches for WWE Speed, its upcoming fast-paced show that'll stream exclusively on Twitter. These matches saw Cedric Alexander vs. Odyssey Jones and Angel Garza vs. Tyler Bate, but Bate's new Catch Republic ally also had a role to play. According to Fightful Select, longtime WWE talent Pete Dunne was internally credited as the sole producer for both matches, without a co-producer listed alongside him. It's certainly an interesting move considering Dunne's reduced visibility in recent times, and at 30 years old, he's currently in an on-screen tag team with Bate. The inclusion of Dunne as the sole producer for these matches raises questions about his involvement in producing more content for WWE Speed, or if it's merely an experiment. Wrestlers often become producers when their in-ring careers are up, but Dunne seems far too young to already be looking at life after the ring. We'll have to see if Dunne's role behind the scene expands further in the future, but for now, the Bruiserweight is making waves in WWE both on and off camera. And we're ending with Jake Roberts, who's been with AEW since 2020, and while we haven't seen him on TV for a very long time now, he's not gone from the company as some believed. During an upcoming episode of his Snake Pit podcast, Jake confirmed he's signed a new deal with AEW, so fans can expect to see much more of him on programming at the right time.